I'll demonstrate. Presto, donut. This hat, bon appetit, donut. Am I going too fast for you?
I get to be in charge of selling these donut holers? I can start my own business?
Everything is different.
It's fine. Lots of people's parents are divorced.
Your dad can't take you to camp.
You guys are the ones whose divorce keeps messing everything up, not me!
This place has some stuff that's okay about it, and some stuff that could be better.
I'm getting off this train.
The magic of animation is that you can always tell unique stories and experiences about basically anything. However, there's a stigma against animation, and that's how it's just childish. Let's be real here, a lot of stuff that we love in the animation community are for children first and foremost. Not to say there's something wrong with something being for kids, but people want something more. And the fact that a lot of adult animation is simply raunchy comedies just makes Western animation as a whole look very childish. While I'll always roll my eyes at the sentiment, I can't really blame people for jumping ship to anime exclusively if this is what we have to deal with. In spite of that, I'm as optimistic as anyone when it comes to finding new and engaging experiences in Western animation, and I think Cartoon Network's Infinity Train is completely emblematic of that. I vaguely remember the pilot making huge waves back when it first came out, but I was initially very hesitant on it. I was still on Tumblr, and I know a lot of people were supporting it, even when it got aired on TV, but while I liked it, I didn't really see how it could be fleshed out. Granted, I do have rocks for brains, so maybe I just wasn't thinking clearly enough, but I didn't know if it had a future, despite me absolutely wanting it to have a future. When Infinity Train came back into prominence, it received a complete facelift for the better, had an established tone and story, and I wanted to see it. Rewatching book 1 for this review, I had a lot of time to reflect on my feelings in hindsight. I loved it when I finished it, and since I'm always on KashCash time, I was able to see Season 1 shortly before Season 2 hit, so it all wrapped up very nicely. Right off the bat, I can say that I still hold Infinity Train in extremely high regards as one of the most unique shows on Cartoon Network, and an experience that can't be had anywhere else. It's because of the fact that in spite of its fantastical premise and setting, the show is very much grounded in its own reality, and never loses focus on its protagonist Tulip and how she affects the world around her, and vice versa. Very early on, we're established in a really nice cold opening that Tulip is just an average 13-year-old girl from Wisconsin. She likes school, she's talented in game design for her age, and she's got a thing for onions, of all things. We later learn that it's been a while since the divorce has happened, but the wounds are still there, so to speak. Tulip doesn't want to acknowledge it and is dead set on avoiding the present entirely, and simply just focusing on game development. That doesn't go according to plan, and Tulip is forced to face the reality that she's in and how it's making her life harder. And she really doesn't like it. It's pretty realistic to want to avoid the toils of real life and indulge yourself in literally anything to make you happy again. Especially considering when you're still a child, you're trying to wonder who you are as a person. Especially considering that when you're in that early teenage phase, you're starting to go on that path to wondering who you are as a person. Tulip has to do with her life changing drastically as a result of her parents' divorce, and she's not ready to deal with all that right now. It forced her to mature when she wasn't quite ready for it. So, I guess that in my eyes, the purpose of the train is sort of like a purgatory where the passenger is guided on an infinite amount of experiences to conquer a flaw in themselves, their character. Infinity Train as a show and the train itself are experiences, and I feel like the show is made of that in mind. So, when you finish a book, you feel a sense of accomplishment, just like Tulip does when she finally reaches the ultimate conclusion to her emotions, and she's all the better for it. Tulip's demeanor can change drastically when she has to acknowledge the divorce happened, and how it's affected her life. So it's not really that much of a stretch to show that Tulip is very cynical about the idea of compassion and companionship. It's why she's kind of apprehensive and confused when she sees 1-1 in Atticus. As she goes through experiences, we discover more details about her personality and how she assesses situations, and it's all delivered in a very natural way. She's not smart because she has glasses. She approaches everything from a logical perspective, to the point of taking notes, trying to look for some sort of consistency in this crazy new world. As we're learning about the train, so is Tulip. And the fact that she's taking this journey with 1-1 and Atticus shows that she is gradually letting herself accept compassion, accept friendship, accept change. 1-1 is constantly jumping from blissful optimism to sardonic, dark cynicism in his multiple voices and personalities. And Atticus is noble, kind-hearted, and very courageous, and he stands by his citizens of Gorginia and his friends. On paper, none of these characters have anything in common. Tulip is the only human. She's the only one who has thumbs. Even still, they bounce off each other very well, and you know that they actually care about one another. Episode 5 had Tulip confront her emotions and memories head on when the cat used a mysterious VHS tape to trap her in her own mind. It was a utopia where she grew up and could experience her mom and dad all being one big happy family. But everything seemed a bit off. Things are a bit too perfect, and in order to get out of her own mind, Tulip had to accept reality. She had to accept that things aren't always going to be okay. We aren't in control of what's around us and how it's affecting us. At least not all the time, but you get my point. It's so interesting because when we first go on this journey with Tulip, we don't immediately think about how these memories have been tampered with. But when we see what's really happened and how Tulip's parents have always naturally had some bad chemistry, it becomes that much more jarring. It's a drastic tonal shift with some surreal imagery, again symbolizing how Tulip was forced to mature, but it's something that Tulip needed to experience in order to become a stronger person. And I imagine that people who are going through similar circumstances in their own lives will find some sort of catharsis through this. Going further, I think a great way for Tulip to acknowledge her character flaws was to literally see her own reflection. Tulip may be in pain, but it doesn't justify how she shuts out emotional help from her parents, her friends, and just lets herself be sad. It's very fitting that her own reflection would just be sick of this. It poses a weird question. If your reflection could talk, would it be happy with everything you do? Being your other half? Tulip shows her selflessness by helping her reflection be her own person, free from the shackles of the identity of Tulip. It shows that ultimately Tulip is selfless, and now her reflection is able to live her own life in the best ability. The final idea that Book 1 tries to convey is empathy. With everything reaching its peak, with the conductor looming on the horizon, Tulip is trying to figure out what to do, and it's easier said than done with all the circumstances she has to face almost entirely on her own. But when she realizes who the conductor is behind the mask, it's shocking. She's not just a villain, she's Amelia, another human in denial of an event that changed her life forever, changed her outlook, forced her to bear with emotions that she wasn't ready to process. Negative emotions she wasn't prepared for, all because of a close relationship that she was used to in her life just vanishing. Amelia is very much a visual metaphor as to what Tulip could be if she gave in to the train's desires of just living her perfect life in there. Both of these characters are resourceful and highly intelligent and desperately want life to make sense, but life isn't always like that. Life isn't made for us to control. At least in this way. Amelia sees control of the train and things fell apart. Knowing that she's just another human wallowing through pain doesn't excuse her actions, but Tulip realizes that they have more in common than either of them thinks, and that's what she uses to de-escalate the situation. Sure, at the end of the day, she leaves the train and is going on for new life with her new dynamic, and Tulip is able to accept that her family is separate. but in a way, it's whole, and so is she, just like One in a way. The steps Tulip had to take to realize this are what make it so important. Tulip's story didn't end in a generic way where there was a big bad that would magically make things better. And I love the fact that the moral wasn't trying to force Tulip's parents back together. Nothing like that was addressed. People drift apart. Friends, lovers, and anything in between. Sometimes you just have to learn how to adapt to change. Sometimes you have to just encounter pain head on. One had a lost sense of identity and belonging, as he always felt he had to try to make things right. Atticus was selfless and always loyal, but it ended up being his downfall. But everything clicked in the end. Tulip earned her right to go home by trying to help mend things with everyone and herself. Even the cat who had lied to her before. She had no real reason to trust the cat, but in the end she showed empathy and humility and was able to let it go. And I think that's Infinity Train's biggest strength. Even with its short length, it's able to pack such nuance into its characters who you just always find something to admire even on repeated watches. The voice acting and character interaction makes everyone feel like a real person even if they are human. And it's odd that such grounded character dynamics blend so well in a fantasy setting and a completely obtuse cast. But that's what makes this show special. I greatly encourage anyone to watch Infinity Train if for some reason you haven't already, and definitely support the show on HBO Max so we can get more of it. It was very much a breath of fresh air. It took chances and pushed boundaries I haven't seen any other show do in a while. I don't know if the lasting impact this show will mirror the all-stars of the last decade, but I have confidence in saying that Infinity Train is a trailblazer towards the future, and further adventures on the train will be just as solid as well.
So, bud, you ready?
I'm ready for anything.